In the previous section, you created your first web page. Now let's take a closer look at how these HTML5 documents are actually structured.
This video is brought to you by OppiePie's Academy.
I've got my brackets text editor open, and I'm going to choose File and New inside of brackets to open a new document. Make the text a little bit bigger in the document for you, and that's just for you to see as you watch the video. You can adjust it to any size that you like. So the first part of any document in HTML is the doctype. And I wrote it as Doctype HTML, which essentially means we're using HTML version 5. Now, a lot of developers will leave this out, and the actual document will show fine in the browser if you do this. However, for the document to be technically correct, you do want to include the doctype element. So that's always the first line. Now, different versions of HTML have much longer doctype declarations. So if you see something other than this, you know that the author of the document was targeting a version earlier than HTML5. Now, HTML documents themselves always start and end with the HTML tag. This is simply telling the web browser or whatever else may be reading the HTML document that this is the beginning and the end of the actual HTML code. Now, by the way, this is an opening tag. That opens the element, and on line 4, I have a closing tag. Notice the slash, which indicates that it's a closing tag, and that indicates that we're closing the element. You'll notice as you code more that HTML5 is basically a series of elements within elements, and every HTML document is divided into 2 sections. The first section is the head element, opening and closing head tag, and the second section is the body element, with an opening and closing body tag. Within these elements, we have other elements. For example, the head always includes a title, and that's the title to your document. I'm going to call this document HTML structure example. The title is very important. It's used by Google to index the page if the page goes out in the World Wide Web, but it's also used in other ways. For example, if someone bookmarks your page, the title is what the default name of that bookmark will be. So it's used for Google indexing. It's also used, like I said, for the title of a bookmark of your page. And finally, the title is displayed in the tab of the web browser when the page is loaded into the web browser. So there's our title. The title is inside the head. Now, the next part of the document structure goes into the body. Now, the body is where the actual content that's displayed in the browser window itself will appear. So I'm going to put in our body H1. This is an HTML structure example. I'll close my H1 tag, and then I'll have a paragraph tag here with P. That'll also open and close. This page is an example of how HTML documents are structured. Then a closing paragraph tag. So now we have a legal HTML document with appropriate structure. Let's go ahead and save our document. In brackets, I'll click File and Save, and I'm going to save this on my desktop as structure. And don't forget, when you save an HTML document, it needs to end with .html. And there's our document appears. And also notice the highlighting that occurs here in brackets, and other text editors too if you were to use one when you save the document. Our tags are in blue in this case, and our content is in white. Notice that our doctype declaration stays in white because technically that's not an HTML tag. But here we have an appropriately structured document with tags inside of other tags. So we have our HTML tag, opening and closing, our head tag, opening and closing, our body tag, opening and closing, our H1 tag, opening and closing, etc. Notice that inside the body tag, or sometimes said the body element, you've got both an H1 tag and a paragraph tag. Inside the H1 tag, you have this text content here, which says HTML structure example. So if you start to think of HTML as tags within tags, it's going to make it easier for you to structure your documents correctly. Let's take a look at this document inside the web browser. So I've got my browser open here. And here's a quick trick. You can drag an HTML document onto the browser surface, and it'll open just like that. So our structured HTML document gave us this result in the browser. Notice first off, it says HTML structure example in the tab, and that's because that's our title. And then we have our H1 HTML structure example and our paragraph. This page is an example of how HTML documents are structured. The main thing I want you to get out of this video is the structure of the HTML document itself and the concepts of opening and closing tags and how tags go inside other tags to create the overall structure of your document.